everybody, welcome to our weekly Wednesday webcast. Today we're going to talk about how to sell your products online. So I'm going to hit 3 key points today. Number 1, the history of retail. Number 2, some growth stories about brands that we all know and love. And number 3, how to know if selling online is right for your brand. So the Gap, the company we all know and love, they started in 1969. And it wasn't until 1974 that they actually created the private line that we all see in the stores today. So what were they selling between 1969 and 1974? Believe it or not, Levi Strauss jeans and records. Yes, vinyl records. Very bizarre. It wasn't until 1997 that Gap actually got online. In 2008, they made an acquisition. They acquired Athleta, which was a Petaluma-based company that was strictly online. They paid $150 million for this company. It was probably the smartest investment they ever made. It was the year after the Lululemon IPO. Lululemon, if you've been living under a rock, you don't know who they are. They are the most popular athleisure wear out there on the market. At the time of their IPO, they had about $150 million in revenue. Today, Lululemon has about $2.6 billion in trailing 12-month revenue. Not bad for selling leotards. So the next acquisition for Gap was a company called Intermix. And Intermix is a very fascinating company. It was founded by 2 entrepreneurs. They were actually fleeing the war zone of Beirut. They came to New York City. They were both working in the retail industry. And they realized there wasn't a place where you can go shopping and buy really high-end, well-known brands, and then also up-and-coming, reasonably priced designers. They created a company, Intermix. They actually opened their doors on a Thursday, and by Monday, they were out of stock. So they actually knew they were onto something. And they actually really knew they were onto something when they got acquired for $130 million from the Gap. So if you can tell, the history of the Gap has kind of changed a lot. So they started out as a retailer of other brands, namely Levi Strauss and records. They created their own private line. They made some acquisitions along the way, and then they acquired Intermix, which is again a retailer of other brands. So a lot of times brands start out selling other people's stuff, and then they start creating their own private lines, and they branch out. A good example is a company called Nasty Gal. They started out just going to vintage stores, finding really great buys, putting these on eBay and selling these at a premium. So they attracted a lot of users. And of course, when you attract a lot of users, you attract investors, and they really scaled this company up. But they decided to create their own private line, very similar to Gap. They decided to actually create physical stores, and that was actually not the right strategy for them. So what ended up happening is they actually had to close their doors. They went bankrupt. They shut all their physical stores, and they got acquired by a UK company called Boohoo. And I'm not making that part up. Their acquirer was called Boohoo. So not everybody can just kind of look at Gap and follow that same story. Everyone's a little bit different. So let's look at a few more brands that I think we all kind of know and love by now. The very first one is Zappos. I think Zappos is the first company that comes to mind when we think about very successful e-commerce, people who are selling products online. So they launched in 1999. By 2000, they had $1.6 million in revenue. And by the following year, they had $8.6 million in revenue. And in 2008, they had $1 billion in revenue. That following year, 2009, they got acquired by Amazon for a little bit over $1 billion. And that's not a really great revenue multiple, but this was during the height of the recession, so everybody was looking for a bargain. And then next I would say Bonobos. Bonobos, of course, is the men's apparel company. We often think that it was founded by Andy Dunn, but in fact, it was founded by Brian Spaley, the lesser-known co-founder. He was an athlete. He had really big quadriceps and a very small waist. So a lot of the stuff that he was finding on the racks just didn't fit him. So what did he do? You see a problem out there in the world, and you create the solution. So he taught himself how to create pants. He got a sewing machine. He got the fabric, and he went to work. He actually ended up selling $20,000 worth of pants to his classmates at Stanford Business School. So at that point, he knew he was onto something. But sadly, he left the company. The company went on with Andy Dunn, and that's why we all seem to think Andy Dunn is the founder, or the sole founder of Bonobos. They partnered with Nordstrom to have some physical space, which people typically call pop-ups. And then they actually created their own physical stores. And just recently, they were acquired by Walmart for $310 million in cash. And that's pretty good. Their revenue was about $150 million, so that's a 2x revenue multiple. So I'd say that, so it's Zappos, Bonobos, And then Warby Parker. I'd say Warby Parker is the third successful company that we always think about when we think about online. Now, Warby Parker actually started online and then started doing, of course, pop-ups. They would put their eyewear into other boutiques. And now, of course, they have their own stores. And their own stores are so successful that they're actually like a $3,000 per square foot in sales. And if you don't understand all the metrics behind retail, the How to Win Over Investors class, which is a free course that I created, I'll leave a link below. It goes into great detail about what sales per square foot means and how you measure it and what the industry standards are, but I won't belabor it today. So again, Zappos, Bonobos, and Warby Parker are three examples of companies who did really, really well selling online. And they both have their own story about how they mixed into pop-up shops and physical shops. Zappos has never had a physical shop, so a little bit of an oddball there. So we'll talk about that toward the end, how to know when it's right for you. But before we go there, I want to talk about a few other brands. 4 brands that come to mind: Bevel, The Honest Company, Casper, and Harry's, which is the grooming company. All of these lines actually started online and then actually now sell into Target. So it's very interesting to see which brands can actually make it online and which brands actually can't. It's really kind of looking at the different equation. I always say that building a startup is a startup math, right? It's just a math equation. So I would say if you can calculate what percentage of your company has to do with convenience and which percentage of your company has to do with aesthetics, and that'll really help you understand. So if we take a look at Dollar Shave Club, it's a great example of a company that launched in 2012. They put out this really funny video about buying razors, which is a really boring act if you think about going to the store and buying a razor is a really boring exercise. But they made it really fun. They had, I think, up to 25 million views so far on this video, and they sold out of their razors in 6 hours. That's when they knew they were onto something. So Dollar Shave Club is a really great example of a company that can sell online because their primary value add is convenience. So if we look at Harry's, who I just mentioned is selling at Target, why did Harry's have to go into Target? I would say the reason why is because their equation is more balanced towards the aesthetic, the look and the feel, right? The Honest Company is another example that can kind of go both ways. Honest Company was started online and it was really about convenience, about getting these products to you. But as it got more competitive, it really made sense for them, not just for distribution, but also for the experience, the retail experience of going to a Target, opening the bottle, smelling it, and seeing what it smelled like, those kinds of things. If you ever go into a Target and you see the Honest Company, they have lots of different setups and a lot of different prompts that actually get your attention. So if you're doing an online only and you don't think physical is for you, really take a step back and look at who your customer avatar is. And that really is going to help you understand what is your growth equation. Who's looking at your product and what is the experience they're having in your product. And we talk about customer avatar and growth equation, growth modeling in Founders Masterclass. And so if you have any questions about that, you can look deeper. But essentially what it is understanding who's buying your product and what are they experiencing it. So you've been in a store before, a really successful store like Apple. How do you feel when you walk into Apple? You walk into Apple and you see all these really great gadgets, all the latest things that you can check out. They have a section in the back where you can take classes and stuff. It's really an interesting experience. So put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. How are they experiencing your product or service? So again, the equation is basically, if it's really about convenience, I would say that Dollar Shave Club is heavily weighted about convenience. I would say Harry's is more about the aesthetic, the fragrance, the way it makes people feel. It's more of a higher premium brand. And then some brands can just kind of go right in the middle, right? I think the Honest Company is a great example of a company that could have just been online its whole entire life. But again, it's about the fragrance, it's about the texture, it's about taking the bottle out and trying it. So really think about that when you're thinking about how you're scaling your company. I really think at the end of the day, it really has to do with what the customer's experience is. We've seen lots of lines try to do just direct to consumer e-commerce, and it didn't really work because they missed that key function of it. There's very few brands that can do really, really well both online and in a physical store. And again, it has to do with how the customer is experiencing your product or service. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is super simple. It's just my first name, Lili@financeforentrepreneurs.co, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week.